Distance can be a major barrier to accessing quality healthcare on time. That's where Angel Flight East comes in. Welcome to Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East, a nonprofit dedicated to providing free flights for children and adults who need medical treatment far from home. We don't know how many people forego medical care because they don't have accessible transportation, and that's what this podcast is here to change. Join passionate AFE staff members Jess Ames and Maddie Beck as they share real-life stories from people who have used AFE services to get the care they need when they need it.
Hey, frequent flyers, you are back with another episode of Takeoff Talk with me, Maddie.
And me, Jess.
Today we have volunteer pilot Andy Chen joining us.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, Jess. Hey, Maddie. How are y'all doing?
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Andy is based out of the Trenton Airport. How long have you been flying with Angel Flight?
With Angel Flight, let's see. I started in the spring of 2019, and full disclosure, unfortunately, I guess we'll hear a little bit more about this later, but work and life and stuff has gotten in the way. So 2019 so far has been the only year I've actually flown Angel Flight passengers, but had a lot of fun in 2019. I'm looking forward to re-engaging and flying more folks as time goes on.
How did you hear about Angel Flight East?
Believe it or not, okay, so back up. I heard of Angel Flight in general long before I ever got my pilot certificate. I was probably, I don't know, like a teenager in my 20s or something like that. So the concept of Angel Flight itself had been around for a little while, and I always thought how cool was of an organization that is. I actually heard about Angel Flight East specifically when I was still a student pilot. I walked into my AME to get my student medical, get my class 3 medical and get my student certificate. And my AME actually had a little billboard or advertisement for Angel Flight East right there. So I grabbed the pamphlet or whatever she had there, started looking through. I was like, okay, 300 hours, instrument rated, got it. And so as soon as I crossed 300 hours, which was a year and a half after I got my instrument ticket in the spring of 2019, that's when I reached out to you all to start flying for you.
That's awesome. And I also want to give you the benefit of the doubt that there was an entire world pandemic in between that last flight and now.
Yes, there was, and unfortunately, my day job is involved with that.
What is your day job?
So I am an officer in the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, so I am an active duty service member. And if you hadn't heard about us before the pandemic, you probably did during the pandemic. And if you never heard of us even during the pandemic, you actually still have heard of us because if you look on the box of a side of a cigarette, side of a cigarette box or on a bottle of alcohol and says government warning, the Surgeon General says this is bad for you. Well, that's my Surgeon General. So the Surgeon General of the United States is a 3-star admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service. And then the agency that I work for does all of the public health and medical services stuff during emergencies and disasters in this country. So even though I don't actually work for FEMA, the easiest way to think about it is I'm the public health. We're basically the public health and medical arm of FEMA during emergencies and disasters. And if you want to learn more about us, I'll give you 2 websites real quick. The first is USPHS.gov, so U.S. Public Health Service, so USPHS.gov. And then PBS actually just dropped a documentary about us last month. So if you go to Invisible Corps, CORPS, just like the Marine Corps, so invisiblecorps.com, you'll see information, trailers, and there's actually a link. You can watch the whole documentary, which is just about an hour long, and it talks about all the things that we do.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I believe you also flew PPE for us a couple times, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I did do 2 PPE flights, and one of them actually I was able to bring my father-in-law along with that flight.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and not only that, but actually the same flight I was able to use the compassion call sign for the first and only time I've actually been able to use the compassion call sign. So that was kind of a neat flight.
I feel like we've been talking a lot about the PPE flights in these podcast interviews just because the pilots that we're talking to have completed them. But Maddie and I, on the other hand, are like, we never want to think about being in the supply chain business ever again.
Tell me about it. And funny enough, because of my day job, I'm actually still monitoring some supply chain issues that are still going on out there.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. That's awful too,
It
especially
is.
because
Yeah.
all of our supplies went to the rural hospitals. And without us or the volunteer pilots, they would have never been able to get the face shields or the hand sanitizer. It was such a crazy time.
It's actually interesting you bring that up. Just before we started recording this podcast, I was actually on a call hosted by FEMA, and they were showcasing DART, Disaster Airlift Response Team, and EVAC, Emergency Volunteer Air Corps, I think is what those stand for.
Mhm.
And the presenter was talking exactly about that, in addition to all the PPE, all the medical supplies that were being flown, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, and how they were able to keep a lot of the facilities going because of those flights.
Yeah, I think when people think of those organizations, the EVACs and the DARTs, they're thinking of the Haiti when it is hit by a hurricane and there is literally nothing to receive. That they think about, oh, here comes the helicopter with cases of water and things like that. So when it comes to these small community health centers where that is their source of primary care, it's not even on their radar. We're like, oh shoot, like they don't have the Jeffersons, the Pens, and all of that right around the corner down the street.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was in Puerto Rico for Hurricane Maria about 6 years ago now. So supplying the mountainous region in the center of the island there with their supplies and medical care and personnel and all that stuff. Yeah, that was a huge challenge, even for something simple, relatively simple as Hurricane Maria.
Yeah. So now, what is your why? So we've heard about the different types of volunteer piloting that is available. What is your why personally?
My personal why, well, when you think about I don't want to use the word clientele, but maybe that is the right word, the clientele that we serve with Angel Flight East, right? That's just a natural extension of what I do. I've been in healthcare my entire career. So for me to then be able to blend aviation with healthcare, I can't, I don't have the time to go get my certs to become a medevac pilot, and or fly EMS helicopters or anything like that right now, and especially at this point in my career, I don't have that ability. But that's part of my, that part of my core, if you will. So being able to then volunteer, take the skill that less than 1% of the population has in this country to be a pilot, and to be able to apply that skill, and be able to serve, in the healthcare arena, that's kind of my why, and also just the whole volunteerism thing, right? I mean, there's a reason I'm a service member. There was a reason I was a volunteer EMT and ski patroller back in the day when I was still in the civilian world before I joined the service. It's for me, that's just a natural extension, and I get to use a skill set that otherwise might actually get a little rusty, to be frank, right? Being able to fly for Angel Flight East and some of the other organizations allows me to maintain some of my proficiency as well and make me a safer pilot.
That's awesome.
It's much better than the $100 hamburger, right?
There's nothing wrong with the $100 hamburger because at some point we all have to eat, right? And
Yeah.
I have a little fun doing that too. But you know what? Again, it just goes back to we're able to take this very unique skill set that we have, that not very many people have in this country, and apply it towards good, right?
What has been one of your favorite flights you've done with Angel Flight?
I think, it goes back to that PPE flight I did with my father-in-law for coming out to Wingsfield and running into both of you, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being able to fly with my father-in-law, right? It's something special. We're coming up on Father's Day weekend as we're recording this, and to be able to share that experience with him. Again, use the compassion call sign, because I've had it now ever since we transitioned to the compassion call sign, and for various reasons, mainly because my primary airplane, it's just really difficult to change the call sign in the avionics and the transponder, so I'm not really able to use it there. So be able to, the one time I was able to use it, that was kind of fun, and be able to hear my call sign over the radio. And just combined with all of that, that was a very, very fun experience and neat experience.
That's awesome. Is your father-in-law an aviator, or Was he totally out of his element with
He
you?
was totally out of his element, but he was having a good time. I mean, I've had the good fortune to fly my father-in-law and my mother-in-law on the New York City Hudson River corridor flight, so I was able to take
That's a
them
fun one.
on that. Yeah, and that was actually, I think, maybe the third time my father-in-law had flown with me. He'd also flown with me. He was actually one of my first human passengers after I got my private certificate.
Oh,
And I say
fun.
that specifically for a reason. But it was, I think, Thanksgiving 2014. I just earned my private certificate like maybe a week, 2 weeks before. And so I took one of my friends and my father-in-law flying over that particular time frame.
And you had also flown the gentleman who had eyesight problems, I believe. I'm blanking on what his name is.
Oh, was this the gentleman out in West Virginia?
I think so, because I always use the picture of you guys holding the thumbs up. I forget what his name is,
Oh,
though.
yes. So yes, his name was LP. I think he went by
Yeah.
LP. His name was Lloyd, young man.
Hmm.
Unfortunately,
Yes.
so I flew him. I remember this very, very vividly. I flew him in October of 2019. Fun story. So he was flown up to me at Patrick Henry Field in Williamsburg, Newport News, Williamsburg Airport. I would happen to be there on vacation with my extended family. And actually my in-laws and my brother-in-law, ironically, my wife couldn't make it for vacation, but I was there and I was waiting for him, and the C-27 cargo airplane, better known as Air Force One, when the president is on board, was actually in the pattern there doing touch and goes. So
Oh, wow.
I'm actually waiting for LP to show up with his mom, and I'm standing on the wing route, just looking up at the Boeing 747, actually technically VC-27, doing touch and goes, and then the other pilot brought him in. And we were able to transfer him, and I was able to fly him up to Linden, New Jersey, as I recall, to so that he could make his medical appointments. Fantastic individual. As I recall, he had gone blind in one eye and had very limited vision in his other eye due to cancer. And we're getting into some of the medical conditions, but unfortunately, he did pass away the following spring. And so I still remember the conversation and the flight with him, because it was about an hour and a half flight. And it literally went like that because we were just having a fantastic conversation. His dad was in the Navy. It was a Navy veteran. And so we were talking about different things. The F-14 Tomcat. So, you can see the Super Hornets here hovering in the background behind me. But he seemed to know everything about the F-14 Tomcat. I was a little bit of a student of the airplane myself because I grew up in the era of the Tomcat, wanted to fly Tomcats when I was coming out of college, didn't have the eyesight, and to make a long story short, never went into the Naval Flight Officer pipeline, so didn't get the opportunity. I was hoping otherwise to get a backseat slot in the Tomcat, but he knew everything. I mean, he knew about the engines. I mean, I thought I was the only nerd that actually knew about the engines that were the Pratt & Whitney TF-30 engines and the F-14 Tomcat, right? I thought I was the only non-Navy guy that kind of knew about it. And he knew about it, knew about their problems and everything, and how they're prone to compressor stalls and things like that. And the energy and joy that he brought to life, despite the fact that maybe in the back of his mind, he might have known he might have had a terminal illness, but you would never have known that just by talking with him. I've only flown 4 passengers, so I actually still remember the other 3 as well. But LP really stood out in my mind for just the joie de vivre that he brought, despite the fact that he was battling cancer and everything. And just what an honor to be able to spend an hour and a half with him. And I was able to text with his mom a little bit afterwards. I think he used that picture in the year-end roundup for 2019 that got released the following spring. And I saw that, and I reached out to his mother and said, "Hey, we made the Angel Flight East video." And she said, "That's wonderful, but unfortunately, he did pass away 2 months ago." So that was heartbreaking to hear from his mom. But at the same time, just what an honor it was to be able to fly him and be able to provide that service to him.
That's awesome. And I love to hear the relationship that is maintained even after that flight. That's an hour and a half that you're in a tight space with a stranger. And even from there, you are still connected.
Yeah,
So
and and I follow you all on social media and all that kind of stuff, and it's always it warms my heart so much when I see you posting pictures, particularly of the kids that have been grown up, and the pilot and the repeat pilot, right? It's not like the kids
yeah,
rotate through different pilots. It's like the same pilot sees the mission pop up and goes, "I want that kid again,"
Yeah,
and
those kids have their own fleet of airplanes and pilots. They're
right,
very lucky, but it's like
yeah.
those are the stories we love to tell, the bond between the patients and the pilots. And despite what they're going through, all of the patients we fly are just so positive and have this incredible outlook on life. And we look back and we're like, our days are no way in comparison as hard as these people that are battling sometimes a life-threatening illness.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and just and certainly we're providing a service for them, and let's not take that anything away from the pilots that volunteer their time,
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
aircraft, and frankly their financial resources to be able to do this, right? Because we don't get reimbursed
Yeah.
for any of this, so we really do this out of the goodness out of our own hearts, and I say that humbly and not to toot my own horn, but but to be able to provide that service so it takes that financial burden off the families so that they can still make their medical appointments. They're not paying for the commercial flights, and at the same time, they're not having to sit in a car for 6 to 10 hours one way at a time. That's so rewarding for us as pilots, but also, you can see the gratitude that the patients and their family members have, and they're able to then parlay that into such a positive outlook for themselves as well, because they know that's one less thing they have to worry about.
Yeah. The volunteer pilot base at Angel Flight East is just so incredibly humble. I always feel like when Maddie and I talk about them, they shrink down because I'm like, somebody has to brag about what the men and women are doing because it's an incredible service. And I feel like they will never get enough credit for the sacrifices they make with their time, their finances, everything to help people get to treatment far from home.
Yeah, I mean, there's that running joke, right? How do you know someone's a pilot? They'll tell you, right?
Yeah, they'll tell
But
you.
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think you're right. Like and I think that's what attracts a certain personality at Angel Flight East, right? We're the ones that are there to help. We enjoy it. We do it because we love flying, and we love to be able to provide this service and all that. And we don't mind being in the background for all of
Mhm.
that, and to let the patients get the spotlight, because ultimately they're the ones that are sick and they're the ones that need the help. So we're happy to do that and then be able to let them take that spotlight.
And so then speaking of attracting to things, what was your attraction other than the nerdy love of the engines that attracted you to aviation? What made you become a pilot?
I grew up in the generation of the original Top Gun movie. I cannot lie, and because I remember as a
Tom
little.
Cruise, Andy, I think we're breaking up. I am not a Tom Cruise fan. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for everybody who likes Tom Cruise.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm a product of that original Top Gun movie from 1986. As a side note, I can't tell you, when my wife and I finally went to go see this movie last summer, and the opening credits started to roll, there's like the tears streaming down my face because it brought me back, right? But
We
anyway,
need to bring your wife onto this now.
Yeah, I know. We need to hear her side of things.
so she enjoys flying with me, but she's not in aviation either. But yeah, I mean, I just thought that was so cool to see that, and it just to be in that environment, and despite everything that the movie showed, I think just the camaraderie and the teamwork that goes involved with that, the military aviation side, right? I'm actually very fortunate. Even my day job now, occasionally I am able to jump on an Air Force airplane and go flying. Actually, I was on a flight yesterday with the Air Force, but that part of it kind of attracted me to flying. And I already knew that I was going to be able to be a pilot. I started wearing glasses when I was started wearing glasses the summer between 5th and 6th grade. So I knew actually being a fighter pilot wasn't in the cards, but trying to get that seat in the back seat of the F-14 was something I was trying for. And to make a long story short, Never had the opportunity, even though I tried, I never had the opportunity to go on active duty with the Navy and even try for a slot. Although I did get one orientation flight down at Pensacola, actually to be more precise, NAS, Naval Air Station Whiting Field. I did get a ride in the backseat of a T-34. I've got a picture or two in social media where I'm wearing the flight helmet and the flight suit and all that stuff while I was in college, but never got the opportunity to actually fly for the military. And I didn't really think about general aviation a whole lot until one of my wife's friends took me flying. He came down. I was stationed in Washington, D.C. I'd already started with the Public Health Service. And he flew down to Gaithersburg, Gulf Alpha, India, to pick me up and bring me up to Penn Valley Airport, Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, Sierra Echo Golf, and brought me in there on a flight because I was flying up. My wife and I were doing some wedding prep. I was back when we were engaged at the time. And that was my first exposure. And then another time he flew us out to the Air Force Museum out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base out there in Dayton, Ohio. And that's when I learned about general aviation and realized I had to get my pilot certificate, where my wife gets involved and she said, you're free to get your pilot's license, but you have to pay off grad school first. And
Oh
so,
boy,
yeah,
that's
she's
not
the
fun.
financial steward in our family.
Man,
Yeah, she's the financial steward in our family, and God bless her for that. So, so I paid off my grad school loans in January of 2014, and that spring is when I started working on my pilot cert. So I've only been flying for a little over 9 years now.
that's awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
I need one of your wives in my life to babysit
Yeah.
my finances like that.
Yeah,
Too
and
many
shout out
Amazon
to my shout out to my
purchases.
wife. She and I say this to give her some credit, not just for managing us and letting me do all of this stuff, right? But in her career, she was in big pharma, and just as a side note, I won't say which company she worked for or which drug she worked on specifically, but she worked for one of the large pharma companies where she was the global brand leader. In her last job, she has since left and is doing something completely different now, but she was the global brand leader for her company's COVID oral antiviral medication. So she was
Wow.
really busy for the last 2 or 3 years. She was at her company, and I'm so proud of her for all the work that she did to get her company's drug out there into market. So
That's awesome.
Aw.
Go Andy's wife.
yeah,
Yes, Mrs.
absolutely.
Chen, we're rooting for you.
Her name's also Jessica. So
Oh, it is?
there you
Oh,
go.
see, all Jessicas are great.
All good. So, and for the record, it's not this Jessica, although I'm going to ask you a question, which is, how's married life? Because I know you're a relative.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was just going to say, I wish my husband would talk about me like that, but I don't know if he would be that nice to me on a podcast, but it's great. Yeah. It's basically the same, except you have a house and more bills to pay. But other than that, I'm working on changing my name officially, but it is not a fun time to spend at the Social Security office and the DMV. So that is in the process.
So I know we're taking this conversation off topic, but my wife did not change her name. She said, I'm sorry, I'm just too lazy and it's too much trouble.
It is.
She has no problem being called Mrs. Chen, and I have no problem being called by her last name. I'm just used to it as the only child of a single mother who used her maiden name professionally. So I got called by my mom's maiden name a lot. So I was actually used to it. So for me personally, I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I know. Tell that to my mom, who asks all the time if I changed my name yet. I was like, I'm working on it. It's just a long process for us.
Just say yes and be called Mrs. Whatever you're married.
Yeah, Barry.
There you go. Just say,
I
yeah,
know.
Jessica Barry. It's all good.
I know. I moved one letter in the alphabet. It's not fair.
There you go. Well, at least you're still at the beginning, though, right? So
That's true.
She's still farther in the line.
So, Andy, if there was anything you could say about being a volunteer pilot, what would it be?
It's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. I mean, again, it's one of those things where you meet some fantastic people, even though they're going through some really tough times in their lives, particularly the cancer patients, right? But it's just so rewarding. And, it goes back to the whole concept of giving back, right? As pilots, we're part of that, like I said, part of that 1% or less that have that unique skill set. But let's be honest, right? If we're able to get our pilot certificate, most of us have some financial resources that the vast majority of the population don't. So it's really incumbent upon us to then be able to give back to the community. And this is a fantastic way of doing it, where you're taking your skill set that again, it's a unique skill set that many of us do not have, and we're able to apply it and apply it for a good cause.
And then what is something that you would say to the non-aviation based listeners?
For the non-aviators, I guess, recognize that, yes, we do it for a love of aviation and a love for our fellow human being and mankind, that kind of thing. But our skills do degrade. So this is a perfect opportunity as well for us to keep our skills up, maintain our proficiency as well. And ask us questions. If you find yourself on a general aviation flight because a friend happens to be a pilot, ask us questions. We love to talk about flying. We love to talk about how things work in the airplane, how the systems work, how the avionics work, what it is it's like to talk to air traffic control and that kind of thing. Side note, I belong to, this is actually going to be embarrassing to admit, so I'll get skewered for this on social media. It's fine. But I actually belong to a group on Facebook that's associated with cats, i.e. felines, and aviation. And one of the things that this particular group allows is for, when a person's cat passes away, to sort of, announce it and be able to sort of express their sorrow and everything. And I think I'm the only person in this group that does this, but there is the Egyptian goddess Bastet, right? And she's the Egyptian goddess that watches over cats. And so in this particular group, we call it Bast's Earport, because we talk about a cat's ears flattening out, right? Because they become an airplane, so we call it airport. And so I give a full route IFR clearance to Bast's Earport for those cats that pass away. So, so that's kind of how I'm educating a little bit of the non-aviation community. It's like, this is what a full IFR route clearance looks like. Yes, I'm doing it in the context of fun and that kind of thing, but now they have an idea of what the whole craft process is and what it looks like but just in a complete non-aviation setting. So, we love to be able to answer those kinds of questions as well.
What is this group called? Can anybody join it?
Yeah, I mean, basically you do have to, and I'm going to look over here and pull up the name of the group. It's
I can't wait to join.
Oh my God.
Okay. This is going to be long, but bear with me. The name of the group is This Is an Airport. Please announce your departure. Aeroplane ear hosting. So if you put that whole thing, and if you want to maybe do a shorter version, I guess search on Facebook for the Earport, not airport, ear as in ears, Earport. And it's all about cats in their ears flattened out.
That
like this.
is the like best thing I've heard all
and for
day.
any of you that are listening to this podcast as opposed to watching this on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, imagine a cat's ears flattening out. And that's the whole thing about this whole, airplane ear, whatever. So...
Wow, that is truly amazing. Whoever created that group is genius.
Right? We
Where is your
Maddie
favorite
into silence.
Yeah, I know. She's not a cat person. She doesn't understand.
But cat people's personalities just get me. I just love them.
My wife and I have 3 cats, so she's a veterinarian by training, and that's what she's doing now. She's back in small animal veterinary practice. So instead of having drugs in the house now we have cats.
Do you fly for Pilots and Paws?
I do. I occasionally will pick up a flight on Pilots and Paws as well. I actually worked directly with a couple of dog rescues, so they will just simply reach out to me directly. One of them is in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. She tends to pull dogs from down south, like the Carolinas or Georgia, and then I will go on Pilots and Paws to try and coordinate that first leg. To shorten my flying time. Right now I'm flying a Diamond DA-40, so as fantastic of an airplane as it is, it doesn't quite have the range and the speed that the Cirrus SR-22 I had been flying previously had. So in the SR-22, I actually did one flight where I went past Macon, Georgia, nonstop on one leg, and then picked up some dogs and flew them back. Can't quite do that in the DA-40, so I will sometimes work and coordinate a fellow pilot to do that first leg, and then I'll meet them as well. So there's a rescue in Egg Harbor Township that she'll often call me up directly, and then there's another rescue that specializes in hounds, so things like breeds like beagles and those kinds of things. And she's in the Chesapeake, Virginia area, I think I want to say. So occasionally I will fly for her as well.
See, now you're talking my language. I have 2 basset hounds.
There you go. I just flew a beagle this past Sunday. So
how do you not keep them? I
right?
can never give them back. Yeah.
I of all the dogs I've flown, I actually need to tally up how many dogs I've flown. I'm somewhere in the 25 dog range and 2 cats, one of which was my own. But of all the dogs that I've flown, I still remember this one beagle. Her name is Posey. And Ryan, the pilot, if you're listening out there, I hope Posey's doing well. But she was a Pilots and Paws flight because I was flying a flight for Sharon, the rescuer in Egg Harbor Township. And it just so happened there was a Pilots and Paws flight that was flying in the same area or whatever. So we were able to coordinate. I was able to bring both. Posey was like this dog. She literally fell asleep in the front seat next to me in the co-pilot seat. She wouldn't stay in the back. I tried to put her in the back. She refused to stay back there. So I put her in the co-pilot seat and wrapped her up in a blanket, and she slept the entire way. About every 15 minutes or so, she would look back up at me, make sure I was still there, and then she'd go back to sleep. And then when we landed at the first airport where I was meeting the other pilot and then transferring the other dogs to the rescuer, I literally was just carrying her in my arms as I was walking around the airport looking for the rescuer. And then Ryan, the other pilot, met me at the airport, transported her up north to the rescue that was taking her in, and then wound up adopting her. So Ryan still has her and never changed her name. Her name's still Posey. Her name was Posey when I got her, and he kept the name.
I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Andy, for taking the time to meet with us today. This has been so much fun hearing about your experience as a pilot and also as a pilot for public benefit flying.
No, thanks so much for having me. I had a lot of fun doing this, and good luck with the rest of them. And I hope your other pilots also have a great time. And actually, I take that back. I'm sure they will, because you two are fantastic to work with. We love working with all of you, and I think I can safely speak for all the Angel Flight East pilots when we say we really enjoy working with all of you. And thank you also for all the behind the scenes coordination that you all are doing. So
we couldn't do it without you guys, so thank you.
And we couldn't do it without you, right? So
I'm never going to forget the name Earport ever again. I'm going to start referring to airports as Earports and see who calls me out first.
So there we go. So actually, before we wrap up, I'm going to put out a plug. So one of the things I am considering, so like I said, I'm a service member, so I'm actually coming up soon on my 20 years of service and thinking about punching out. And so it's a plug for you all at Angel Flight East, but also the pilots as well that may be out there listening to this. If there's any interest in Angel Flight East getting into the disaster response world, let's have a conversation, because I might be able to help facilitate some of that stuff when I retire out and have a little bit more time to help with some of the stuff like that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We'll definitely call you for that.
Yeah,
one.
I'm already trying to reach out to the guy that gave the presentation earlier today about EVAC and DART. So maybe we might be interested especially if there's enough interest from the pilots out there that want to help out. Maybe we can set up a little subgroup within Angel Flight East that could then take that on as a special project or something like that.
Yeah,
that'd
definitely.
be awesome. And especially, I don't know if you know this actually, but so 30 years ago is the founding of Angel Flight East, and we were actually founded for disaster relief. So we originally did flights down to Florida for Hurricane Andrew, and we were flying medical supplies and medical professionals down there.
Perfect. So we'd be getting right back to our roots if we start going down that road.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to take that on, because I as a Fed working within that FEMA structure, I already know how that part of it works. So it's simply a matter of just plugging in and making sure we're talking to the right people and coordinating the right way. I did the EVAC DART guy that I heard the presentation from It sounds like there does need to be a little bit of infrastructure that we need to set up ahead of time, particularly within organizations and organizational structure and that kind of thing. But yeah, again, if that's something that AFE is interested in doing, and if there are enough pilots that would be interested in doing that, I'm happy to do. And as a volunteer, I'm happy to help sort of work that in the background once I retire from active duty.
Yeah, you're hired.
So yeah, I've got about 3 years to go before I'm ready to punch out. So
Well, we would only hire you for about a sandwich, so we can wait.
hey, that works.
Yeah.
For me.
Thank you so much for your service and all you do for Angel Flight.
No, happy to
Yeah.
do it. And again, thanks for having us aboard. And we're glad to be here, as they say in the Blue Angels, right?
Right, something like that.
Yep.
But thanks, Andy. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Bye.
Later.
That's it for today's episode of Takeoff Talk with Angel Flight East. If you want to learn more about our services, please visit our website at www.angelflighteast.org or call our office at 215-358-1900. Join us in our mission. If you're a healthcare worker or a patient in need of air travel and flight services, AFE is here for you. Subscribe to the show so you can hear more stories. Join us again next week right here on Takeoff Talk.